Welcome back to Night Mind, friends. I do hope wherever you are, you're enjoying the weather. We're pulling out of the last of that winter chill into the embrace of spring, and my mood around this time always drifts to the more dreamy and fantastical work that exists in our domain. Works reminiscent of the calm and unique emotions present in the fugue states, and that shift from the quiet cold to the more vibrant season. You seen any good movies lately? How about unique art house type things? I've got something for you here. First presented through a submission to the Night Mind Index. A lost film from 1963, undergoing restoration effort, and its presentation is a bit wilder than you might expect. I often like to give just a taste of the study for our visits before sending you off to experience it in full on your own time. But with the short nature of this currently, it's far better to provide in advance. The playlist of the existing footage to this project, Anatomy 1963, is available in the video description, and I highly encourage playing it yourselves, then coming back here for the further discussion. This gives the art its original impact and directly supports the creator, and for the moments in Anatomy that really hit, you'll want to experience them in full context. Anatomy, presented to us now by the group Los Desolados Films, comes in two parts as we see it tonight, with more surely on the way. Its first half is a mesmerizing enticement into a narrative captured in salvage pieces, but I don't need to write a newspaper's art section review when the footage is available. Many of you will notice immediately that this 1963 film isn't crafted in a manner available to directors in 1963. The work we'll observe is digital, stylized according to the period, with some variations in approach for presentation. Initially a touch disorienting, you may find it adds to the surreal touch while delivering the narrative in a way the creator was able to, not to make a pun, bring it to life. Our next scene opens on the central character of the piece, Margaret, preparing to work on an outfit. She collects a pair of scissors, checks a fashion book she's following, and examines a mannequin before revealing she's keeping pins in her arm. Margaret applies them to the dress in progress, then works at the sewing machine until a knock at the door gets her attention. She apologizes to the visitor, saying she must have completely lost track of time. Her suitor, Edgar, assures her there's no rush. Still, Margaret takes a moment to quietly stress over the situation, then tries on outfits in front of the mirror for her date, not quite happy with any choice from the expression she wears. Our next scene sees Margaret and Edgar traveling in the car, having a conversation. The audio levels here nearly drowning out their speech impresses on us how the restoration effort for this film is in effort. The audio salvage wasn't as strong as the visual. This won't always be the case, and the conversation is light date talk, just a compliment from Edgar about how pretty she looks. Her eyes, he means, though Margaret thought he meant the dress. They pull up to their destination, step out, and we focus in on Margaret as the screen ripples, an artifact of the restoration. The next scene, certainly further in, isn't so clean.
All my life, I wish I could meet someone as perfect as you. This is all very sudden. I will need nothing. This happiness to continue elsewhere.
The garbled section cleans up just in time for a new element, illustration, revealing a proposal in progress. Of course, Margaret says, followed by a celebratory dance in 2D line work. They enjoy each other's newly engaged status, until...
There must be a few pins left in this dress I forgot to take out.
Well, I'll have to be careful then.
We know that Margaret's pins are kept in more than just her dresses. Where else has she been keeping them on her body? A new scene. It's a thunderstorm outside. As Edgar makes an advance to his new fiancée, she admits her struggle. She doesn't want to get married. Edgar immediately asks if she still loves him, and she does. But as she tries to explain, the music rises into a peak of volume battling with the dialogue. The lights change and the score shrieks as Margaret's revelation nears, until she has no choice. She takes off her dress and stands in the center of the room, her skeleton casting a silhouette over Edgar.
Jesus Christ, Margaret. You're dead? How did this even happen? How long have you been dead for?
3 years. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you.
So you lied to me for years? I waited for you.
Edgar, please just let me explain. 3 years ago, I woke up in my bed, went over to the mirror, and it was all gone.
So you don't know how this happened?
I'm afraid not. Probably going to leave me for another woman.
No, Margaret. I still love you. I never ever want to lose you, but I need time to process this. I'm sorry, but I'd like you to go home.
Home? I'd have to walk out in the rain.
I'll give you a raincoat and an umbrella. You can catch a taxi.
Edgar assures her of his love at the door, but doesn't accompany Margaret home. The color work introduced in the previous scene returns strongly here, a rich cold blue over the wall as Margaret faces him, then fading back to black and white as she leaves. We follow her outside, processing her emotions just beyond the building's door, and the tears begin to flow. A title for the end follows, but it's thankfully not. A credit sequence depicts Margaret walking home in the rain, but coming across a figure on the streets, who we soon see in the usual format, smoking, a full skeleton. A lot of different elements of anatomy will strike viewers as resonant, though the impact of its horror scene will likely be the most consistent point of conversation. The work done here in audio, model and voice acting, composition, and color combines to a grand emotional crest for a reveal. It's much in the vein of old horror films, leaning as strongly into the swell of harsh rising tension music as possible and ensuring hits of visual matching. The aftermath too talks a lot. The persistence of red in Edgar's initial reaction and inspection, followed by the coming down from that emotional intensity in the way the colors drain out, but take on a lighter blue tone of sadness as the conversation continues. Just the scene of Margaret on the other side of the bed as Edgar sits with his head in his hands is quite a visual. Her skeleton is so prominent, even as she picks up her dress. There's a real dreamscape nature to the construction of anatomy, the use of CGI in a black and white film presentation, the introduction of color and 2D animation, the warping and technical mess of some visuals and audio at certain moments, and all involving this plot of a woman who's mostly skeleton, talking to her lover. It takes allowing the dream space nature of this work to take you there in order to really weave its full spell, but its enchantment isn't a chore. Curiosity as the film cut rolls compels you to watch, and it might be to its greatest strength that the most impactful scene here is the most intact. Contrast and quality locks you in deeper, allows intensity of focus. There are even sly elements of old film in the work, like this big black circle on the screen's upper right, signifying the end of one film reel and calling for the next to play after a brief hold or intermission. Many of you have said you've used my videos to fall asleep while getting a good night chill, and for years, the Manta Sleep Mask has been making that easier for me. I truly am nocturnal. I need to sleep with no light striking my eyes, so you can imagine how difficult morning and afternoon can be for me. The Manta Sleep Mask makes sunlight a non-issue, always giving me the sleep I need. Since partnering with Manta Sleep, they've sent me the Manta Pro, perfect for side sleepers. They've also been generous enough to send me the Manta Silk and Manta Sound. Manta Silk is stylish luxury, exactly the material and look you expect while delivering the Manta Sleep experience. And the Manta Sound, with its built-in adjustable Bluetooth speakers, is perfect for those of you who need to listen to something to fall asleep, or could use total darkness and soothing sound for certain occasions, like meditating. Entirely adjustable to your need with removable eye cups, Manta Sleep Masks are soft and machine washable material throughout. With so many options to choose, from eye cooling to a weighted mask, there's a Manta Sleep Mask for everyone. Available through the link here and 10% off your order with my coupon code NM. This link is also in the video description and pinned comment. And again, if you've been having issues with light sensitivity and a sense of environment separation to get the sleep you're after, I can tell you from years of use myself that Manta Sleep will truly help you sleep tight. Anatomy 1963 Part 2 arrived in February 2025 and brought with it a new visual strength from the creator in animation work, model detail, and old film touches. If you found yourself immersed before, you may slip deeper now. As Margaret walks alone in the coldest of rainstorms. A car passes, distracting her for a moment before she catches sight of the stranger seen at the end of the first part. No music plays, just the projector fuzz and the sound of the rain.
Excuse me? Do you need any help with that? Wait, do you work here, or are you just trying to break in?
Just open the door.
This sequence is different from what we've previously known. The scene is longer, the animation works smoother, and the composition is cleaner. The silence lends the moment of speech more importance and underlines the weight of actions in this interaction. The creator has vastly improved in the directive work over the prior scenes. Margaret hesitates at the open door, looking in on a dimly lit empty theater, then enters the next scene.
What are you doing here?
Watching the play.
What's it about?
It's sort of like a myth. You know, like a fable. There's a knight. He ventured alone into a cave to fight a dragon. But he was burned to a crisp by its fire. He lost his face and his eyes. So now he's blind, wandering around.
It's not like us to pause a scene carried so well, let alone one with such love for delivery as these voice actors. But I know that flash of letters didn't pass you by unnoticed. They spelled out escape. The writing on the film reel is an interesting inclusion, especially for an undisturbed scene. Let's continue.
You know I can see your hands. They're turning into dust, right? Why would you do that to yourself?
In this moment, all of our attention is on these two characters. Margaret's bright gaze is like a spotlight as she leads our attention to both her and the stranger as he admits he wrote this play. 3 years without coming up with an ending, wasted. This heart-wrenching moment stretches out as Margaret's form is seen through the stranger's fading fingers. His hands are pale, fragile, translucent as if to defy the very essence of life. A chilling question lingers in the air. Will the rest of him soon vanish into nothing? When she dares to ask why he would do this to himself, he responds with a soft yet deliberate gesture, a silent shush that stills her voice, leaving only the weight of his sorrowful silence hanging between them.
Who plays the knight?
What? I have no idea.
Why don't you play him?
That's ridiculous. I'm not an actor.
But you wrote it. Nobody knows this character better than you.
It's not even finished.
Could you just pretend? You've got the entire stage to yourself.
What are you trying to do?
Just imagine it's you. I'll help you find your way home. All right?
A play without an ending, an empty stage, suspended in time. For 3 long years, the stranger has struggled to finish his work, his soul restless. Margaret, unwavering in her resolve, rises from her seat. Her persistence is a quiet force, compelling the stranger to follow her lead. The blind knight has found his actor. Margaret's hand slips through his own, a silent promise between them. In a gentle, almost reverent gesture, she covers his eyes, guiding him through the darkness and leading him toward the stage. The theater, empty and mute, holds its breath. As her hand retreats, the air shifts. The music swells, filling the silence and transforming the moment. The stage begins to glow with a soft, ethereal light. The stranger, once shrouded in uncertainty, is reborn. The blind knight, his journey complete, stands whole once more, his presence alive and undeniable as his hands solidify. The play has found its end, and the theater, once barren, now teems with possibility. Margaret's gaze softens and she voices her familiarity with the stranger's turmoil. He's been alive for hundreds of years and will continue to live on. His stories will continue to be written, and millions of little choices will be made that will affect the world. It brings her own future into question. This stranger is a striking glimpse of what awaits Margaret. It's a curse, being dead amongst the world of the living. But there are still moments of opportunity available for them. A chance to change something. A chance to make a choice. The film comes to an end, and a new dawn washes over Margaret. The title cards roll, and we are treated to a heartwarming vision of the stranger's play. Both of these characters serve as one another's Virgil in some sense, guiding lights assisting the other to see. Margaret helps the stranger find his way to the stage and become whole once more. As for Margaret, she ends Part 2 in a position vastly different than where she left Part 1. In the previous, the footage ends with her in the dark, alone on an empty street, tears streaming down her face. In concluding Part 2, it's like Margaret has found a piece of herself again. A sepia filter covers the screen mimicking the rising sun. By keeping the stranger from fading, whom the credits reveal to be named Thomas, it's like she's found a reason not to fade herself. She feels the sun's light on her face and stands still to take it in. The night before brought her to tears. This morning's light illuminates a smile. Anatomy, in its incomplete status, is a film whose core meaning is not labeled on the surface. A horror film that doesn't bring any screams, but rather a laconic rising tension that leaves us wanting more. This story is not complete, and these characters' journeys are far from over. Part 2 feels entirely different in its emotional impact and visuals. The ethereal dream space stays the same, yet it feels like we've entered a different dream, pulling back on the relationship and having a tighter focus on Margaret and her experience in this world that allows us in much further upon meeting the stranger. Her polar opposite has entered the scene, the original character who opens up this series. While Margaret's face and limbs are intact, the stranger is nothing but a skeleton, and still he walks around, skull revealed. We're already questioning Margaret's skeletal existence, but gain new awareness. This is not an isolated condition. Why are these characters living with this affliction? And what is the meaning behind the opening quote? The bones reverberate the sounds of the soul, and they become pure marble. The film won't provide us with all the answers, but we will investigate what will later. The image of the two characters sitting and watching the stage is a subversive twist. Our eyes aren't drawn to the stage, but to the seating area where these two reside, magnifying the sense of their isolation in the world. An escape? Yes, you could call it that. In the heart of Part 2, we ask ourselves what it means to fade away. Thomas's hands are almost entirely translucent by the time he's introduced. When this is brought up, he ignores the inquiry while continuing to watch the empty stage. The song El Campo de Golf plays, and there's a sudden shift in the feel of this film. There's a warmth, a romantic nature to the song that makes the exchange between the two characters all the more human, despite their skeletal appearance. Thomas is the writer of this play, but lacks a role in its production. And now here's Margaret to help guide him to the stage. A major piece of the play is missing. Much of Thomas is missing and slipping still. In finding his ability to accept a greater role in his creation, to be in a position of visibility, to be centered in his own work, in his own life, Thomas's soul, his affinity to continue despite his physical nature, solidifies his place in the world. At the peak of emotion, the lights flood the stage with radiant clarity. The music swells to a deafening crescendo, each note vibrating with the intensity of the moment. Thomas stands tall, his form revitalized, eyes sweeping over the empty seats that have come to life in his rebirth. For a moment, he is not just an actor, not just a figure of endless stories. He is alive, within the theater and beyond. When he turns back to Margaret, a heavy silence fills the space between them. There's a subtle shift in that brief, fragile moment, a possibility hanging in the air. Could something more come of this? But as quickly as it appears, it retreats into safety. Margaret's observation of Thomas's time in this world and all its possibilities stirs her own recognition. Maybe she has just as much in her own time. The silence that remains is no longer one of uncertainty, but of quiet resolution. In its current state, much of what can be said about this film is primarily speculation. With only about 20 minutes of salvageable footage so far, there's still plenty that we've yet to see. Lucky for us, there's more to this project accessible now. Taking a step back from anatomy, let's look at Los Desolados Films, the team behind the restoration. There seems to be something just a bit off as we take a look at their website. Examining the homepage, it takes us back to a younger era of technology. Bright poppy avatars and a music player liven up the site in a way that feels personable. Their quote, "Here to bring you films from another world," can seem innocent enough on the surface, but let's dig deeper. Under its welcome text is a mission statement to greet the viewer, followed by a greeting from Los Desolados CEO, Maria Romero. If you visited the site before watching Anatomy, nothing is too out of the ordinary, but now that we've all watched the film, the site's true nature is clear to us. Welcome to Los Desolados Films. Here we curate, restore, and distribute the finest, strangest films we can find. We are dedicated to finding a lost film called Anatomy, directed by legendary filmmaker Milo Williams, as well as selling a small variety of films we hold the distribution rights to. For the love of all art that is unsuccessful, desolate, and alone, we shall shine a light and spark its life anew. Los Desolados Films is here for all art, and for you. That seems awfully close to what we witnessed in Anatomy, doesn't it? For the love of all art that is unsuccessful, desolate, and alone, we shall shine a light and spark its life anew. Moving down, we catch our first glimpse of the Los Desolados team and the new comedic side we've yet to see. The main project tab brings us to 4 separate windows to choose. How It Was Lost provides us with a background of the team's original goal. Milo Williams, an aspiring film director, died in a sudden car accident on October 17, 1956. Milo would become undead, and while at the hospital was told that all of his flesh and organs would have to be removed to prevent rotting pain, the typical procedure for the dead in the first half of the 20th century. His wife Cordelia would be permanently deceased from the crash, leaving him alone in the world. He'd leave the hospital days later as a dead man full of sorrow, grief, and inspiration. This is the day Milo set out to direct his first feature film, dedicated to his wife. Remember the Los Desolados film motto, "Here to bring you films from another world." Clearly, Milo's world and the one we reside in are of different natures, making Anatomy a story based on the reality lived by its director. Before his death, Milo was an antisocial person who had one particular fear. What if he lost his life before he ever truly knew someone? To avoid this fear, he would connect with 3 particular people to help bring his artistic vision to life: Fran Harper, Clark Bava, and Curtis Matthews. With help from Clark, who was part of a production company named Royal Garden Films, and a few other connections, Milo would be given the time and resources to create his first short films, which would eventually lead to the creation of Anatomy. With Milo directing, Fran starring as the protagonist Margaret, Kurt playing the role of Thomas, and Clark producing, Anatomy was well on its way. After a year of shooting and 2 years in post-production, Anatomy was released to mixed reviews and abysmal attendance. Despite the disappointing numbers, Milo was proud of the work. Anatomy was able to catch the attention from a representative from MGM, Russell Aston. From here, Milo would create 4 more films and conclude his work in 1979 with Wallace Visits a Cemetery. Milo would win Best Director at that year's Oscars, accomplishing the dream he set out to follow, and would take a 5-year break from filmmaking. Milo Williams has not made a film since 1979 and was last seen in 2006. Since his success in 1979, Anatomy would become something of a cult classic. Milo's film collection would find a new audience in a home release that allowed his work to prosper. Around 1983, during the VHS boom, Royal Garden, the production company Milo worked with, attempted to bring his films to VHS. When they attempted to find Milo's early works, they discovered all known copies of Anatomy were severely damaged, though they are unsure of how exactly they were. Only 2 usable copies were found, one in English and the other dubbed in French. Unfortunately, the most damage to the film and his legacy would come from Royal Garden itself. Due to bad investing, Royal Garden put aside the efforts of preserving the integrity of Milo's work and tried to capitalize on it instead by creating a cheap, inexpensive collection of Milo's films. The VHS and DVD releases of Anatomy were recut, re-edited, and stripped of its ending to save time and money. This left the film in a disastrous state, with its preserved visuals and performances obscured by grain, and its story left in shambles due to the recuts. The VHS sold extremely poorly, and the DVD release has virtually been lost due to rental practices leaving most copies entirely broken. Anatomy is almost entirely gone, now more than ever. The number of people who even remember seeing the true version become fewer and fewer over the years. But with Los Desolados films, that all changes. They are dedicated to restoring this masterpiece, and by doing so, hope to finally begin understanding Milo and Cordelia Williams. It's quite the legacy left behind by an undead man. 5 films, an Oscar for Best Director, and cult classic status for his art. But none of that tells us what happened to Milo. Going back to the previous page, clicking on production history leads us to a brief description telling us that much of the info about the production of Anatomy remains unknown. However, we do learn that Milo discovered a novel his wife had been writing in secret, and after months of studying the unfinished book, this is what led to the creation of Anatomy. Back to the main project page and over to the cast and crew page. Here we are allowed to learn more about those portraying the characters on screen, starting with Francesca Harper, aka Margaret. Fran was the first person to be cast in the production due to her close relationship with Cordelia, the original writer. Milo saw Fran as an obvious choice for the role of Margaret and took it up with the intention to pay tribute to her late friend. Her performance is what gives the film its emotional core, fulfilling her goal of portraying a complex, deeply troubled human being. However, Fran would frequently argue with Milo over his directing choices and creative differences. As time went on, her view of the film worsened to the point where during the first public screening, she walked out of the theater after only 15 minutes of the film. This would mark the last time any of the cast members saw her. She'd live out the rest of her days in Michigan, raising her family. Under her bio, the website lists a fun fact, stating Margaret's condition in the film is physically impossible. While flesh and organ preservation has come a long way since 1963, there is no possible way for her to exist with her condition. With this in mind, it reveals to us there is a limit to this undead process. Much like Cordelia, not everyone who dies can become undead. Possessing flesh as an undead person can be an extremely painful process, as mentioned earlier, due to rotting pains. Curtis Matthews, aka Thomas, died in 1954 and found his entryway into the world of film shortly after. After being discovered in New York by a casting director, Curtis was chosen to star in an English adaptation of the French play Cyrano de Bergerac. When filming concluded, Curtis would return home to America to star in another film directed by his old friend, Milo Williams. This ill-fated adaptation of the play would later be intentionally destroyed by a rogue editor before it could be released. Curtis did not learn of this disaster until after filming for Anatomy was underway. He believed this would be his last shot at having a film career. Anatomy remains his only major screen credit. Alexander North, aka Edgar, was an American actor who predominantly worked in genre films in the mid-1960s. He had minor roles as well as a prolific stage acting career. He seemingly left the film industry for good around 1981 to pursue professional theater opportunities. Anatomy features Alexander's first on-screen appearance after being discovered by Milo during his work on the production of the Philadelphia Story. Alexander loved working on Anatomy and viewed it as an important step in his life as a performer. Lastly, there is Nora Elizabeth Russell, aka The Angel. Not much is known about Nora. Her only film role is that of Anatomy, and she passed away at the age of 35 in 1978. The research into her life has been a painful and saddening process for the Los Desolados films team. Her performance as the elusive, sinister angel is profoundly intriguing, and we hope that the restoration of the film will do her justice. This description is all we have of Nora Elizabeth Russell. As of Part 1 and 2, the angel does not make any appearances, so there's not much we can say on this end. But with continuing efforts from the Los Desolados films team, hopefully we can get to see her performance sometime in the future. The last tab on the main project hub, Solving the Mystery, comes to an all-white page with simple black text and a link to the old Royal Garden film site provided to us by Mark. As we get to the site, we come to a black and white floral pattern page with a gold text box beckoning us to enter. By doing so, we arrive at the About page. There's a brief description of RGF and its mission statement and history before it abruptly is cut off. Their contact page doesn't provide any information other than that the company is based out of Brooklyn, New York. As of November 11, 2010, information has been redacted for privacy concerns within the archive. The archive? Haven't come across that at all. Their products page consists of items that appear to be 3D animated much like the rest of the world we've seen. A vintage S70 camera, a VHS DVD display case, a vintage 70mm film reel, and a full tour of the facility are all listed at various prices. All of the products are only available until 2006-02-27. Is that an error, a code, or a proper date for the world that Los Desolados Films resides in? Lastly, the film's page is lost, with no provided information. It seems like this is all the information the Royal Garden film site will provide, so let's step back. The Films tab for Los Desolados brings us to two options. Clicking Our Film Collections lists all the films that the team has worked on thus far, allowing us a place to purchase their work. If you take a closer look, however, there is a note from Dragonfly. No shipping outside of Vayu available, we apologize. Vayu? This is the first we've heard of this place. Besides this one mention, there are no other details to work off of, but at least now we have a name for where Los Desolados Films is located. There's been mentions of real-world locations plenty of times now, New York and Michigan, but never Vayu. If these locations exist in Vayu, what could Vayu be? Another dimension? A description of anatomy reveals we've only seen about 20% of this film thus far, with restoration still in progress. Based on what we've seen, much of what is described is not seen just yet. We learn that Margaret was violently killed 3 years before her introduction. We see her reveal to Edgar and his reaction to her skeletal body, but not much else. Malevolent visions begin to follow them wherever they go, and a dead stranger may be Margaret's only hope for a peaceful existence. So, stay tuned for more nightmarish sequences in the future. The rest of the films are given a description, with 2 available for purchase. However, by clicking the Purchase tab, we're reminded we are out of shipping range. The Films We Love tab lists a variety of iconic films that are hand-selected by the Los Desolados Films team. Descriptions are provided, as are links to a majority of the films which can be freely watched on various streaming services, including the movie theater and slasher love letter Popcorn from 1991 for free on YouTube. Alright! Popcorn is one of my favorites. This movie deserves so much more recognition. Nick Nocturne says, check it out. Clicking on the Videos tab leads us to the 2 current parts of anatomy along with 2 videos that have been marked down as private. Video 2 is listed as Restoration Studio Tour but has been deemed no longer appropriate. Video 1, the greatest lost film you've never heard of, Anatomy 1963, is listed as out of date and no longer meets our quality standards. This begs the question, what's hidden behind these private videos? The Employees tab brings us to the people behind Los Desolados Films. Maria Romero, Orkin Magana, Mark Anderson, and Jimmy Thatch respectively. I offer a salute to this wonderful team. As we get to the photo gallery, we find eye-opening images that were shot during the production of the film. From speculative illustrations, promotional photos, behind-the-scenes photos, and shots from the film, we get a unique look at what went on behind the scenes of Anatomy. It's a very cool touch, adding behind-the-scenes shots for your fictional animated film. Lastly, we can't forget the Fanworks tab. Always good to show creators some love. So, what does all this mean for Anatomy? Well, the restored footage in its current state does a fine job of carrying the overall story of the complete film, but with the descriptions given by the website, there's still so much that we've yet to see. There's a flair of horror in Part 1, a romantic redeeming arc in Part 2. Much of Margaret's story is unknown, and all we can do is wait for more. Our reviewing from the first 2 parts does grant us a better idea of messaging. When do people truly begin to die in a world like this? When they lose the will to live, and that's deeply tied to purpose and connection. Beautiful in its dreamy nature, interchangeably horrific and romantic, Anatomy is a mesmerizing young project with so much to give in its current installments, and so much more it can offer to come. You already know how this works. Go to the official YouTube page, which I have linked in the video description, and subscribe to be there for the next parts as they come out. Oh, well, would you look at that? Dreamed a bit too deeply. Woke up in the spring season. I was tight. I didn't realize how tightened up I was. Welcome back to Cabin Fever Dreams, everyone. And if you've been hanging out over on Nightmind Live, well, double welcome back since you've been here enjoying it since spring equinox. And a whole lot of you can come over and enjoy more Nightmind all the time in live fashion and the uploaded, edited VODs, which are infused with the Nightmind approach, you know, and have a more open discussion format and fun style. Yeah, it's true. I can lighten up. It's more Nightmind, just live. And I'm currently doing it in my March hair form for the spring season, as is tradition since the beginning of Cabin Fever Dreams. I've just never looked this sexy doing it. There'll be more fugue state and hyacinth-scented trips to come, but for now, let's give the usual gratitude. Thanks to the creator of Los Desolados Films and Anatomy 1963 for making Los Desolados Films and Anatomy 1963. Thanks to all of you for watching. Thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. And thanks to my supporters on Patreon, who empower not just Nightmind, but the Nightmind Index for new, undiscovered, and emerging unfiction projects, where I first discovered this one. Patreon also helps me support my editor Moon, who composed the foundation script for this video, made the visual build, and is my office wingman, allowing Nightmind Live to fly. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and like a cinematic classic, you'll be seeing me again real soon. Until next time, sleep tight.